Happy Devil's Saturday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 47, titled No Hockey, No Sports. I am your host, Sam Wu, here at the Bahama Breeze, at the site of the Florida Panthers Arena, right across the river. If you see the arena across the river, I am your host, Sam Wu, here with Nick Villano, who is staying home today for obvious reasons in Tampa, Florida. Welcome to the State of the Fan Address, powered by Pucks and Pitchforks blog, and also powered by Nova Product Design from Primetime Radio, now simulcasting on the Primetime Radio Network. Nick, we have a great guest today. We're going to get him up a little bit shortly. I'm here at the Bahama Breeze, where we were supposed to be doing a live podcast in front of a lot of people, but as everyone knows, the sports and especially the NHL has suspended play. Nick, why don't you fill us in on the latest?
So, right now, we're just kind of in a holding pattern. Basically, what's the deal is everybody go home. The one thing that came out just not too long ago that's kind of scary for me is a lot of the teams are I don't know what some of the NHL teams are doing. I don't know if they let people go home or that hasn't come out. But I know a lot of the baseball teams are sticking together, like the Yankees are sticking here in Tampa, and a lot of the teams, the NBA teams I know, are staying together and self-quarantining within themselves. But as far as the hockey teams, Canada, the country of Canada put out kind of a scary warning today where they said don't or to come home as soon as you can before you're not allowed to. And I think they were talking about travel and commercial travel, but it left some things to be interpreted, and that's kind of scary. Most of the NHL is Canadian, and
yes,
a large majority of the teams are in America. So if Canada is worried about, I don't know if they're worried about having closed borders or what they're afraid of, but that's a scary proposition to even put out there.
It is very scary. These are uncharted territory. First off, how do you keep the players safe? How do you keep the players safe, the coaches safe, the fans safe? Number one, shutting down the league, indefinitely was the first step following the NBA. That was the first step. Second step, do you keep the players together? Do you isolate them? Do you have them go home and take care of themselves? How do you do this? When you do that, they're flying home on a plane, right? So, yeah, there's no manual or procedure for this. All you can do is use common sense, use logic to try to, minimize the chance of getting coronavirus. And, even me being here, I didn't take any chances. I just drove straight through. Through. We were here in Florida anyway, and right now there's not piles of hockey fans before the Panthers and Devils game. There's an empty arena behind me as I'm sitting here at the Bahama Breeze. There's no hockey, no sports. Everything has stopped. The only time sports really stops, recently is before the Major League Baseball All-Star game and after the Major League Baseball, All-Star game. So, this is going to go on for at least a month, in my opinion. At least. I mean, but, till this is rectified, until this is actually contained, we should expect this to happen, for quite a while.
So, you're not getting an NHL hockey game until May 1st at the earliest. It's not happening. The amount of time that's going to take the players to get back up, get going, and get game ready after not even hitting the ice as a team for weeks. Let's say this lasts until April 1st. April 1st, the coronavirus dies down. We have a handle on it, and looking at China seems to have figured it out finally. All last week, China only had 15 new cases of COVID-19. So, it seems like that they've seen the outbreak. It's spread like wildfire, and now they've gotten it under control. And so theirs started in the middle of December. It's now the middle of March. So it's about 3 months. So I think that America they have less people and more so I feel like they can contain it a little bit quicker, but still, say you contain it in a month and a half and we already count the half month that came. That means that you're finally containing it in the middle of April, and it's going to take at least a week for everybody to feel like they're safe. So now you're thinking of the, April 20th, let's say, when they decide, okay, we're ready to bring games back. And this is the absolute earliest, by the way. I don't think it's going to happen this fast, but this is the absolute earliest. And, I mean, you're going to want to skate for more than a week. So I'm thinking May 1st is the absolute fastest, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think June 1st is a safe bet. And then say, what do you do? I mean, the draft is supposed to be at the end of June. Free agency is supposed to be July 1st. What are you going to happen when contracts end in the middle of the playoffs? And then my worry, Sam, is next season. I feel like I wrote about all this. I wrote about all this on Pucks and Pitchforks this morning. I wrote the 5 possibilities that I think could happen to the NHL and how it impacts the Devils. So I broke it down to 5 different options. So there's 5 possibilities in my mind that can happen. There's one where the season just ends. We're done. The 2019-2020 season ends with us, Stanley Cup winner, and we reset for next year. Good job. Everybody gets their money. Our escrow is screwed. Whatever. There's a global pandemic. We'll figure out what the consequences of that later. So that's the first possibility. The second possibility is that we eventually try to start and redo, and reset the season. The Devils play their final 13 games. Everybody plays their final games, then we play a full playoff. I just don't see how that's possible, but maybe. So it's definitely possible. I just don't see how that's likely, let's say, how that's probable. The other option is end the regular season as soon as you come back, start the playoffs immediately. That's possible, but what do you do about Vancouver? We're very interested in Vancouver, who's currently sitting outside a playoff spot if you count it by total points, but they're third in the Pacific if you count by point percentage. So that's a very big deal to us as Devils fans because I want to know if we're getting that first round pick. And then, so there's that option. I've heard the option that we could extend this season, move it, but then you got to push next season back. So what that would mean is, say you end this season and, August 1st is the last day of the Stanley Cup Finals. You're not going to come back and have players playing preseason games in a month. So that means we're probably not starting the regular season until middle of November. So that means we have to wait even longer to see a competitive Devils team. And then beyond that, the other option is, and I'm sure a lot of people out there might like this, everyone makes the playoffs. Or maybe everyone but Detroit. Since Detroit was technically already eliminated, throw a 30-team playoff bracket in there. Give some teams some buys. We do for the team. Maybe we do a tournament of all the teams that were outside the playoffs. They get a 1-game playoff to get in, and then we can do a 3-game, playoff series with some buys, and then we do 5 games, and then we do the traditional 7 for the last 2 series, or something like that. I don't know. We there'd be some things to work out there, but
Yep.
I also think that that's a possibility. I mean, you got to work out the timing of it. I think the real situation that we're going to be looking at is, even with the shortened off season, I still think the 2021 regular season is going to be pushed back, and maybe you accelerate it so you still get all the 82 games in, or kind of like what they did with the how many games was the 2013 season? Do you remember, Sam?
I believe it was 48. 48
yeah,
games?
I think that sounds right. 48,
Yep.
48 sounds right. But they fit 48 games. It's more than half a season within 3 months, less than 3 months, because they started in the middle of January. So they accelerated the season. But, I mean, I think that you could see something along those lines, like where they start in November and they still play their 82 games. There's just going to be a lot of back-to-backs, a lot of
Yep.
through 2 and 3 nights, or 3 and 4 nights, I mean. There's going to be a lot
Yep.
of that. So that's what I see happening, Sam. Those are the options. I mean, which one of those would you like most?
I would like to see a Stanley Cup, I think, and a draft. The number of games and record keeping. I mean, this is just an extraordinary event. That's out the window. That's not a priority right now. I think right now the priority is making sure the player safety. Right now, let's contain this coronavirus. When they come back, they're going to need to get into conditioning, get into game shape. You don't want to come back too soon, not in game shape, and get hurt. And possibly be out 6 months, some of the players. So there are a lot of things that are factored in. Now, what I'm going to do, Nick, right now is talk to social media. I'm going to try to get Chico Resch on right now, and just to make you jealous, even though you live in Florida. I mean, look at this background. Look at this beautiful arena. I can't wait to get back to this beautiful arena. Like, we were supposed to go in there today. We were supposed to go in there today.
I mean, it was it was today.
Yeah. So, all right. So let me get Chico on the Nova product design hotline. All right.
All right.
All right. Please hold.
All right. So I'm pulling up as many of your comments as possible, but the internet's working a little bit slow for me. I will say, I want to hear what you guys think. What all you folks think that we should do with this season. What do you want to see? Let's see. Okay, I finally got it up. Pete Maggio, top 4 being 2 from Eastern Conference and 2 from Western Conference. Oh, let's see. What if they took the top 4 teams and did like small playoff rounds for a cup this year, then figure out the rest of the standings as far as trade deals, clauses, etc. Maybe just extend next year's season to include the games lost this year. But again, there's so many clauses on draft picks this year. It's kind of unprecedented. So I think I don't know, something. I don't know. There's just so much that this did to kind of throw things off. And I don't really know what they could really do about it, but I think that you have to have some kind of playoff, because you're going to have to make up that money that they're losing. And I understand, like, I need to just preface this, that this is not the important thing right now. We're just trying to give us something to talk about that's not coronavirus specifically. Something that's not going to scare us, something that's not going to, really just put the fear of God into all of us, because I think we're all just need a little bit of an outlet after a week from hell. So we just want to talk some hockey and kind of get excited about the options when we get out of it. So, some of the other options, like, I think that playoffs have to get played because the escrow is massive. I was reading Elliot Friedman's column today. There's talks of $700 million in losses the NHL is going to take because of this. And that could mean the escrow could be up to 22% of the player salaries. Now, escrow is mad confusing. I'm not going to lie to you, but I'm actually going to ask Chico about that specifically, because I kind of want to know how that works and the ins and outs of that. I've never had any need to look at escrow. I just haven't. So I haven't studied up, and I probably could look it up tonight. But I'm just going to ask Chico about it so he could tell you while we have him on. But I mean, I want to know what the players are doing. Are they sitting in houses by themselves? I feel like some of them are going to get super, just. I mean, you just get out of your mind when you just sit there for hours on end with nothing to do. Like, there's only so much NHL 20 you can play. By the way, on Twitter, we've announced that we are doing an NHL 20 tournament to kind of let the season go by, and we'll figure out a way to record all that, throw it on Twitch or something. And then, so if you want to get in on that, make sure that you're going to the Pucks and Pitchforks Twitter account, or send a message to the Pucks and Pitchforks Facebook page and send me your gamer tag and the system you play on. We'll get you all in. We want to do like a 64-person tournament, kind of replace March Madness and hockey all at once. Just kind of give us something to talk about, something to think about that's not coronavirus related. So that's something that we're going to be working on this week. Hopefully we get that done by the end of next week, and that'll be ready to go. Maybe I could talk Sam into letting us do a selection show on the Let's Go Devils podcast feed. Just a lot, as much fun as we could possibly have. And, that's what we're here for. We try to give you the facts on the Pucks and Pit, or the Let's Go Devils State of the Fan address. We try to get you some interesting information, but more than anything, we're just here to have fun and here to kind of get your mind off some things. But I see Sam's back.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back with our wonderful guest from the Devils Hockey Network. He was supposed to be here at the Bahama Breeze, but obviously with the season being suspended in NHL. But you know what? Glenn Chico Resch is a trooper, and we thank him for coming on to the Nova Product Design Hotline from the New Jersey Devils on the Devils Hockey Network. Color analyst Chico Resch. Chico, how are you doing today?
Well, good. And as Nick said, hockey has always been fun for me. It's been met some great people. And it's that hasn't changed even though the league shut down. And I'm excited the fact that you guys are still having your podcast, because the interest hasn't waned. Maybe more interest now than ever. At least for me, I'm so fired up what's happened recently with the Devils, not with what's going on in the world. But that's just a wait and see thing. But what's happening with the Devils and the improvement and all the wonderful things happening below the surface, that's real. And so I know you guys want to talk about some of that, and I can't wait to be a part of it.
So, Chico, a lot of interesting ideas have come out of this pause, as Gary Bettman has called it on the season, and what could possibly happen when they come out of it. First, I wanted to know what your thoughts. What do you think that the NHL is going to do once we reset?
Well, I mean, the biggest question is a time issue. The shortest duration I think I've heard is about 3 weeks into early April, right? That's what I'm hearing. That's what I don't know if it was Bill Daly or maybe Gary yesterday talked about, we'll take 2 or 3 weeks and evaluate where we're at. So I think timing is a big part of it. I think we're going to see some hockey. I don't know if we're going to see another Devils uniform skating around on in an NHL game this year, which is kind of sad. But I think they will salvage some of the league, and it could be, as you've heard, maybe it's going to be a round robin. It's going to be among the teams that percentage-wise have a shot at making it, which I think is fair. So timing is going to dictate some of this. I said right away they could shorten the first round 3 to best of 5 instead of best of 7. Heck, when I played the year we won the cup, was it a year before? I'm not sure, but we had the first round was the best of 5. So, I mean, I'm very encouraged that we're going to see something. But for me, I'm just wondering, how will the Devils fit into this whole scheme of things going forward, where we might see them play again. And I got to tell you, boys, I don't know. I'm very just wait and see on whether the Devils will hit the ice again.
So one thing that I've seen, Chico, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. Just being a former player and being somebody who's been around hockey for as long as you have, I've seen two options where the Devils would still play. I've seen one where they play to everybody gets to 72 games, so the Devils would still get, I believe it's 3 games in before the end of the season, and then they start the playoffs. But the other option that I've seen is some executives apparently are for the option of just let everybody get in, do a March Madness style bracket, and then once you get later in the rounds, then we kind of go back to normal 7-game series. I mean, what kind of importance would it be for this Devils team that's had one of the most tumultuous seasons we've seen in this franchise's history to then inexplicably make a weird playoff style bracket?
Well, Nick, I mean, it's a good scenario, but I don't see that happening much at all. I'm not going to say what I'm hearing from within the Devils so much, but I don't see that happening. The logistics, we're talking about, availability in rinks. We're talking about even if they just do the round robin with the 2 wild card teams, and then the next 2 wild card teams are on the outside looking in. I mean, if they just do that and then try to run a full playoff run for the Stanley Cup, I mean, you're going to be into probably July almost anyway. So I don't see how they would do the other. And it would be tough to organize all that. I mean, and quite honestly, I haven't read the scenario that you just recited. I'm not saying somebody couldn't be thinking of that, but I think that's got a very small chance of happening.
So Elliot Freeman said he heard it from one GM. I don't know who the GM was. Obviously, he doesn't, he's not going to reveal his sources, but he said one GM is one of the people who kind of threw that out there. And I've heard a couple other podcasts throw it out there. It's a fun situation to talk about, at least.
Oh, no, it is. It's probably the Detroit GM or somebody who's out of the playoffs who just wants a shot at getting in. Because, I mean, there's so many issues. For instance, there's a huge source of revenue that's going to be lost. These final games to see who was going to get in the playoffs, they were heating up. I was thinking of Devils beat the Rangers last Saturday, but on Thursday night of that week, the Rangers played the Caps. And people were raving as it was one of the best hockey games they've seen in a decade. And that was true. So my point is, it's really unfortunate because we've all waited for this crunch time. I'm thinking even the Devils fans to say, okay, now Devils are going to play some meaningful games. They're going to be playing teams that are either vying to get in or move up in the standings in a better place in the standings. So this is going to be much more intense than maybe what you would see in January, let's just say, or earlier February. So it is disappointing that the best part of the regular season, no one knows what's going to happen with. And then the playoffs, hopefully we'll get some there. But I don't know. I haven't heard that. And like I say, I heard a lot of scenarios within the Devils sphere of influence, and that one's never been floated by anyone in our organization.
Hey, fair enough. Hey, you don't want to get your hopes up either, right, Chico? But one thing that you did bring up, and I kind of want to ask you, so you brought up that they could be playing games into mid-July if some of these scenarios play out. What's that going to do to the 2020-2021 season? Like, how much time does a player need to rest in an off season before he can be possibly asked to be ready to go again?
Well, I think what you've heard, and when I say end of July, I'm not sure. I think, remember that one lockout year? Well, the year the Devils won the Cup in '95, it was a late playoff, later in June. I don't know if we've ever touched on July. But I wouldn't say the end of July, but I would say within the first 2 weeks of July, and then you could shut it down. And then maybe you push the season back a little bit. I mean, they could mess around with some things like maybe you don't have the bye week for a team. I mean, they could even mess around with an all-star game, although I know they don't like to do that. But I'm saying you could condense the season. And to be honest, the players take a break. And, of course, the teams playing into July, they're going to take a break through the rest of July and August and whatever, shut her down. Maybe say they get two months rest, and then they'll come back. And the other thing is, I think with the way the game is now, it's strenuous, but it's more like of a cardio game than it is like a hitting, banging, a physical game that is a different kind of fatigue level. The other thing is the charters, which, I'm on now, make it much easier for teams to play 3 out of 4 nights or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we would notice. I mean, the players might get a little more tired in some instances, but I don't think as fans we would notice a drop. And so I think they'll just shorten the following season, and they'll be fine with it, because I think priority number one is, imagine if you went into July, and I don't know what's going to happen with the NBA, but imagine if you were one of the only shows or the big show in June and into July, and get that kind of exposure and so forth. So I think the league really wants to try to get the attention. And you guys know, Sam and Nick, going to games in June, and even if it was the first couple of weeks in July, it's fun. It's warm. You celebrate outside the arena and the plazas. You feel good. You know what I mean? So I don't think that would be the worst case scenario.
No, I don't think it would be that terrible. Yeah, I think. I mean, at this point, if we get any hockey, I think that we're going to be happy in the long run. But
yeah,
it's a weird season. But let's take a look back at this season, Chico, and if this is the end, what's kind of some of the things that stick out to you about this New Jersey Devils season?
Well, one of the major things that happened to me, and I was thinking recently, and this is one of the disappointments if we don't get back, the emergence of Pavel Zacha, Jesper Bratt, and Gusev have been, it's been inspiring. Like, Pavel Zacha has worked so hard to bring his level up. And, even I know there's lines, we've seen them with the Devils when I think of the A line that was just dynamite. I look at teams that are contenders and look at a line rather than, if you said to me, what do you think of when you close your eyes and see Pavel Zacha? Well, I think of the other two as well as he. I think of them as a unit now. I think they've solidified that. And, Bratt and Zacha are kindred spirits. They hang out on the ice. I mean, off the ice, they're together. And Gusev just learning English, and I watch their body language. I'm sure you guys do too. The fun part of hockey is, I would always watch the stuff that's happening, not just the game. What are players doing on the bench? What are they doing as they're skating around or whatever? So I just see this line kind of having come together as a power unit. They understand each is dependent on the other. It's like a rope. Is one strand stronger than 3? No, of course. 3 strands is much stronger than 1. So anyway, for me, I looked at that line, and 2 of them are really young, as you know. Bratt and Zach are 23, I think, and younger. And then Gusev's a little older, but he's fit in nicely. So that to me is one of the biggest things that's jumped out at me. And then, of course, before I keep going here, the other thing for me is the goaltending has solidified. I mean, Corey's 3-2-1 since returning, .922 save percentage. I'm just saying, I never thought he had lost it. I knew he'd lost his confidence. But I saw down this last few games, and just having talked to him, he has got a whole newfound level of confidence, and because of what he's been through, I think it's increased his hunger, to prove to people, to prove to himself. I mean, even your family, there's so many factors that are driving Corey Schneider. And the other thing is, he and Mackenzie Blackwood, who I think is going to be a phenom, really mesh well. They got the right personalities to be a tandem. They got They support each other, and it's just a nice blend. So for me, guys, those two aspects, which I think are pretty important for the Devils hoping to make the playoffs next year, those two things are the brightest lights for me at this point right now.
So, you just talked about next year, and I'm kind of glad you did that because I could kind of transition really easily into this to my next question. I'm concerned because the Devils have more decisions to make beyond simple free agency and draft than any other team in the league. They have an interim head coach, an interim general manager, and they have a lot of really hard decisions to make. You just brought up Corey Schneider. He's still set to make $6 million over the next 2 years, so they have to see what they want to do with that contract. The year after this one is the year that they have the expansion draft in Seattle, so they're going to have to be thinking a year ahead with all of their transactions. Mm-hmm. But with these front office, they could end up having to clear out the entire front office, scouts, everybody, just because if they go with a new regime and new head coach, new GM, does this short amount of time, does that hurt them? Well, I'll just ask you that.
Yeah, no, that's a great analyzing. I agree. But before I answer, I want to ask you guys, and because you're more like the fans. First of all, let's go with Tommy Fitzgerald. What kind of job do you think he's stepped up and has done as an interim up to this point now?
I'll go first, and then I'll let Sam go. I think Tom Fitzgerald earned the job. I don't know what they're looking for specifically in a general manager. I know that we have the Devils have one of the pretty most extensive analytics staff, and I know that from what I hear, they want to use that a little bit more going into the future. So I think it all has to do with what Tom wants to do in the future. But for him to get I've gone on record to say I wasn't exactly thrilled with what we got on trade deadline day, but maybe Sami Vatanen's injury is worse than we thought. And maybe some of the expectations were kind of high, but what he did to get what he got for Andy Green and Blake Coleman is that's yeoman's work. That's something that I just didn't think that we were going to get from anybody in this team. And to come out of this, with an extra first round pick, a decent haul in the lottery, if Sami Vatanen can end up playing, if he could end up playing 70% of the 70% of the playoff games that the Carolina Hurricanes are in, then we get another third. Then we're only really missing the second that we traded for PK Subban last year. And then we also have the 2 extra first-round picks, depending on how everything falls into place with that. I think he's done a really good job. And just to get this team loving I don't want to say they didn't love the game before, because that's obviously a trope that I don't think actually exists in hockey. All these guys love it, or they wouldn't put themselves through the kind of schedule and the kind of scrutiny that they put themselves through. But the fact that he got a team that was done, that had nothing to play for, to start winning again, and I think that's a big deal. I think that to get a mindset of a team, it's partly head coach, but I think it's a lot just the organization in general. And Tommy Fitzgerald is the guy that represents the organization right now.
Yep. All right, that's good. Sam, what about you, Nick?
I think Tommy Fitzgerald has earned the job, to be honest, because he brought stability. He brought, in the midst of all this chaos, as a fan, I feel like there's hope. He made hard decisions and traded Blake Coleman, traded Andy Green, and got some assets back. I feel like there's hope here. And I also think that Nazardine has earned the job as well, because the team was in disarray when John Hines got fired. But, when Mackenzie Blackwood as a rookie goes 7-0-1 in the month of February, and then Corey Schneider finding his game finally, you got to give the head coach credit. He's doing very, very well. So, that's my assessment.
Do you think that's Raleigh Melanson, or do you think that's Nazardine?
Oh no, I mean it's a team, but Alain Nazardine has solidified the forwards, and knowing Alain, he's got a personal touch with the players. Like I mean, in his interactions, you would like him, you would like being around him, you would like working for him, and he works hard. And what I really like about him is he's like Al Arbor, maybe even Scotty Bowman a little bit, but guys who wear stars who said, okay, I can't tell you what I did great because I don't think I did anything necessarily great, like Al Arbor or whatever. But he says, but I had to learn how to just be competitive. I had to learn, like Alain Nazardine, he carved out a pretty good career. Most of it was in the minors, but great team player. So he gets all the aspects, and nobody works harder him than he and his crew. So as far as coaching, I would be agreeing with you that he deserves a chance. He deserves a chance. Here's the one thing I would say. Pete Horacek has done an incredible job of pulling the defense together and getting them to understand who they are. What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? For instance, an example is PK Subban. He's got PK to understand. PK, your career as a dynamic defenseman is done. That you were great in Montreal, and things change, the game changed. You can't hit the way you used to, all that stuff. But if you will refine your game to play within a system and keep it, PK's got a great long pass out of the zone up into the neutral zone. He's had a couple guys on breakaways. He's become more competitive. My point is, Pete Horacek has done an incredible job of working with his defense. Now, remember, they're hungry. PK, he had to be frustrated and upset with himself, or bewildered at the very least, to start the season when he just was totally out of sync. I don't think he knew who he was. Now he's got some semblance of who he is as a defenseman and who he can be. Then you got young guys, scratching and clawing. I mean, Mueller, he played some of his best hockey as a Devil, put in a higher role. And that's not to evaluate each person on, you got to bring them back or whatever. I don't know what they're going to be doing. But, so then this is the only thing I would say. So Pete Horacek is not going to be a coach next year. There's going to be an opening. And trust me, this is just me throwing it out there. Would I like to see, one Devil come back? Yes, I would like to see, and this is just a thought, I would like to see Scott Stevens come back if he wanted to. I don't know. Where we had a thread to that, and Scotty did a great job coaching defense. Tommy Elbeline, he's a little bit older. He's running the Swiss team, although I don't know if they're going to have the World Championship. I would like to see a former Devils defenseman come in and have a connection, someone who can work. Because to me, building that defense to be a unit that can defend, and just give Corey and McKenzie, Mac Black, as you guys called him, a chance to be their best, and then to obviously throw up some offense too, but just to be a really, really good defensive core, I think gives us a great chance, to beat anybody next year, like they're proving now. So I like the coaching. I think I know Pete's going to step aside, so there will be one opening. But all this hinges on what you, Sammy, talked about. Well, both of you did, about who's going to be the GM, because as you guys know, people want their own people they trust, people they've had a connection with, people they can communicate with. So if it's Tommy Fitzgerald, you might not see as many changes. If it would be a new GM, you could expect there would be many more. The last thing about this, and I'll let you guys finish here. Tommy Fitzgerald, his job, you're right, Sammy, some of it filters down to the team. But I can only tell you as a player looks at the general manager, but he's not focused on the GM. Like, obviously, if GM trades, two really good players and gets nothing in return, the players are going to start saying, "Oh my goodness, what's our GM? What's our leader doing?" That hasn't been the case, but they really focus in on the coach because that's their personal, everyday relationship. But for Tommy Fitzgerald, what is his connection is to the scouts, his assistant GM, to his head scout, pro scout, minor scout. Here's the thing: is the Devils have built a really nice network of scouts and people who know the game. Now, you were right, Sammy. If you were to bring in a new general manager, then it would be like, okay, well, when are the changes going to start? So, personally, I hope that doesn't happen. That's me as a fan, because I have a lot of confidence in Tom and the rest of the group that works under him, and I think we've done well. So those are what we know. Those are some of our hopes. I'm sure, like you guys, I've had enough change for one decade, or maybe not a decade, but at least a few years. So I hope it kind of stabilizes. But we're all just kind of guessing, and those are my thoughts on looking at
Chico. In full disclosure, I was a big Tom Fitzgerald fan when he was a player. I was a very big fan of that '96 Florida Panthers team. As I'm sitting here with the BB&T Center in the background in Sunrise at Bahama Breeze, and the whole Scott Mellenby and the Rat scenario, and then that miracle run, and then they ran into Patrick Waugh in the Stanley Cup Finals, and they find themselves there. And I was rooting for that underdog, the expansion team, in 2 years making the finals, or I think it was 2 or 3 or 4 years. And Jovo Cop, if you remember him, Jovanovski, and that team. That was a fun, gritty team. Unfortunately, they weren't able to beat the Avalanche, but and that's the reason why, because he was a leader on that team, and I feel like that leadership as a player is also translating into taking a role where he lost his mentor, Ray Shero, in the midst of it, the chaos. But I just feel like the waters have calmed right now, and the expectations of hope is there.
That's a great summation. Remember this, guys. People think, "Oh, you're old school." I'm not old school. I still teach goalie schools and do goalie stuff. I don't teach old style. Here's all I'm saying, and why someone like Tom, or someone who has been through what you just described, I like analytics. But here's what analytics can't tell you. There's one puck, and that puck goes in the corner, and you could maybe analyze why, say, the two players go in the corner 10 times. You say, well, this guy comes out with it, let's say, 6 out of 10. And the other guy only 4 out of 10. Okay, that'll tell you that. But it still won't tell you why that happens, the heart of why that happens, why some people... I think of a great example is Pavel Zacha. If you broke down his analytics from a couple years ago, you would see him not winning as many puck battles, okay? So you're going to go with that. But now Pavel Zacha, like I say, along with his line, they're getting loose pucks. It's changed. And the analytics can't tell you why it's changed. It's the same thing when you take when someone's shooting from the slot, the analytics can tell you that was a high danger chance. But it doesn't tell you, oh, it was the fourth line guy shooting, not their top sniper. I'm not putting down, don't get me wrong. There's this whole, I'll tell you guys, there's this whole thing going on within the hockey world of management and owners, and this whole thing about, yes, analytics has a place, but it can't supersede finding out about the character of a player, his background, why say, Brendan Gallagher for the Montreal Canadiens, or Jesper Bratt. Why? Why is Jesper like that? You know what I mean? And when you're building and you're looking at juniors, or you're going to make trades or moves for younger players, I get the analytics, but you've got to have people on the ground who have dug into what has been their background, in the real important situation. Because I think I told you, like Mike Bossy, one of the greatest goal scorers of all time, he told me there were times where he would fall down on purpose, or he wouldn't drive into the corner when, like, say, Gary Howard or Bobby Nystrom would to get the puck. You know, he would go to a place where he thought the puck was going next. He said, I can't beat that guy in the corner, but I can go to the logical place that I think he's going to pass 8 out of 10 times, and I'll get it then. I'm just saying there's those things that happen in sports that happen in nothing else really in life, and you've got to have people that can see that and know it, that there's that little difference between that guy and that guy. And that's why when you talked about Tommy Fitzgerald, Tommy has that. And so, again, you guys, we're all making good points. I'm really excited. I mean, for next year, there will be some changes, and there has to be. But let me tell you, let me ask you guys this now. Of the younger players, let's talk about, is there anyone else in, let's say, in a bottom 6 role, right? Whoever that could be, in a bottom 6 forward that has caused you to say, you got to get that, you got to bring him back. He makes an impact, whether he's third or fourth line. Who do you guys like on that?
Well, I mean, the Devils have a really weird line dynamic. Like, when you look at time of the ice, the fourth line isn't always the fourth line. Right. So, one thing that I'm torn on personally, Chico, is Kevin Rooney, because Kevin Rooney did not have a good first 3 months of the season, but he looks like a different player over the last 2 months, and I don't know what I can rely on with him. Can I rely? Did he just get better? I mean, we saw what happened with Blake Coleman. Blake Coleman was not the player he was this year 2 years ago. It took him until he was 25 to even make it onto the NHL ice. And Kevin Rooney's about the same age. I think he's 26. So is Kevin Rooney the type of player? He doesn't have the speed that Blake Coleman does, but he does have the heart and the grit and kind of those inspirational aspects. So he's a player I personally, I'm going to write about it, because usually that's how I kind of get over these things, is I kind of put it on paper and I figure it out as I'm diving into these things. But right now, I wouldn't hate it if they gave him another year.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Okay, how about Joey Anderson? Joey Anderson going to be a player in the top and the bottom 2 lines. I mean, Joey's probably not going to be 1 or 2. When I say the lines are, but let's be honest, you got Heischer's line, Palmieri, and whoever the winger might be, and then you got the Pavel Zacha line, which I think is a lot of nights has been number 1. But when we go down to like a Joey Anderson on the team next year.
So I think that with the salary cap probably not going up like we thought it was going to. I mean, I don't want to be quoted on that, but as far as predictions goes, I think that the Devils are going to have to, with that $9 million PK Subban salary, and if they keep the $6 million for Corey, they're going to have to figure some things out. I mean, they're still going to have plenty of money, but they're going to want to upgrade the defense. They're going to want to upgrade the top 6. So the bottom 6, I think you're going to have to rely on Joey Anderson to be an NHL player. You're going to have to rely on somebody of the Michael McLeod, Joey Anderson, Yanni Kuokkanen, Nathan Bastian, kind of that group. I think you're going to need to get 2 players out of that group. You got Studenich, you got a couple others. Boquist, obviously Boquist is a player that they're going to need to rely on next year. So I think 2 of the players that were mostly AHL, or, I don't want to call them afterthoughts, but like prospect players this year, I think are going to have to make it.
But
so I think Anderson's going to make it.
But like who? Okay, but I mean, is that the only reason he's going to make it by default? I'm trying to pin you guys down as fans. Are you saying he's only going to make it by default, or is Joey showing you enough, killing penalties and what he's done when he's gotten comfortable, to say no? He's going to be a pretty good third or fourth liner.
I feel like that if you gave Joey Anderson a consistent role, I think he'd be really good. I think the bouncing back and forth doesn't help a player like him. because he's not a Jesper Boquist type who's just an insane talent. He's a player. He has a lot of talent, but he's more of a guy, captain of the USA team, captain of the NCAA championship Minnesota Duluth team. He's the kind of guy that, he plays a different role. And I think that from what I've seen glimpses of a really, really, really good player in there. And I would pencil him in absolutely based on what he's done on the ice.
Okay. Now, and see, McLeod is younger. I'm not sure on Mikey. Obviously, I like his speed. I like some of the things he can do. And here's what we're talking about again, because you brought up Coleman. The analytics cannot tell us who Mikey McLeod's going to be. Not that it can't tell you some things about the strengths or weaknesses of his game. But Mikey McLeod, we'll get to Miles Wood. Mikey McLeod's speed right now is a bit of a detriment only because he's going so fast. And he's been told his whole life, you're the fastest guy. You're going to be successful by just flying around out there. Well, obviously that's not the NHL. So I don't know what you guys think about Mikey McLeod. I'm saying we got to give him a couple of years. I don't know if he's going to be on the team next year, but I think I see some potential there. Would you guys agree with that?
I would agree. So, and Chico, just to get back to the whole analytics thing, and I'll make a joke here. The analytics didn't work in 1980 when the U.S. beat the Soviets, and David Ayers beat the Toronto Maple Leafs. So there you go with analytics. I mean, the analytics cannot judge a character and the work ethic of a player. It just cannot. And analytics has its place, but I just think that you can't rely on just numbers when you're putting together a team. And I'm not bashing analytics as a whole. I'm just thinking that you just can't. It's not a 100% guarantee of putting a successful team on the ice.
Oh no! You're dead on. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I think that what you have to do is you have to take the analytics and then look at what you see on the ice, and then look at the analytics, and then use the analytics to see what you're missing on the ice. Because the game of hockey is so fast that the eye test, like it works in football, like it works in baseball, like it works in basketball, the eye test doesn't work in hockey because it's so fast that you are missing. And there's 5 guys playing 5 integral roles every single shift. And since the shifts are about 40 seconds to a minute 10 apiece, there's stuff you're going to miss every single time. And that's where the analytics step up. So I think that people who are using only analytics to tell me if a player is good or bad, I don't think that that's the right thing to do. But I think analytics are going to play a key role into finding some really interesting players. One player that kind of really interested me about how the analytics didn't play out is Bo Bennett had some of the best analytics that we've seen on that. I think it was the 2015-16 Devils team, or maybe it was 16-17. But he had great analytics, and then the Devils cut him. And everybody was up in arms like, why did you just cut this guy? And he didn't – I don't think he's ever made the NHL, or maybe he played a couple games with the Flames, but he's never really had a role on any NHL team. So maybe that's one where the analytics just didn't play out.
No, and you're right. And, when I say the eye test, we talk – like we're all saying the same thing. But you guys have to understand, you got a life, and you guys watch hockey, but these coaches and these scouts, they are watching video. Like you're right. You even any coach will tell you, he gets asked the question after a game sometime, what about this or that? And he might say, listen, I'm watching the big picture here. I haven't broken down the tape enough to know exactly what that player did or didn't do it. But I watch these guys. They are watching tape 100 times more than you and I. It's just what they do, the scouts. Like, for instance, now with the season on hold, both the pro scouts and the amateur scouts, it's the beautiful thing about the world now is video. So they're going to be studying video of, like, say, the players available for drafting in the first round. Well, heck, you could get 10 or 12 or more games of those guys, and you just watch them, and then you see, oh, look at the path he took. Oh, look at how he bailed on that play. Oh, he had a chance there, but he always does the same thing. He's got a great toe drag, and in junior hockey or certain situation it works, but once they take that away, what's step 2 and 3? Where does he go then? You know what I mean? So, again, analytics are good. And I would just say this, though. I read some people writing, some younger people, and they're just going all to analytics, and they're sounding like they know the game inside out. And I'm saying, like I was reading something, I don't want to mention names, but they were talking about the decisions being made by Lane Nazardine in regards to the lineup. They're saying, well, I don't know what he's thinking of it. I'm saying, listen, you don't even get it. He's not making the decisions now. Devils are out of the playoffs. You've got a general manager. You got assistant GM. He's got assistant coaches he's talking to. They're coming up with all kinds of scenarios. Like, the Devils put Jack Hughes on the wing. And some people didn't like that. And I said, well, where are you going to put him? Who are you going to take out of the center ice position? Well, at that time, they were trying to play him with some skilled guys, Paul Mary and Heischer. It seemed like a good trial. It hasn't worked. Then he was going to go back to center, as you guys know, come Carolina, which never happened. But my point is, I think sometimes, whether it's analytics or whatever, they just pick something and go to school on that and don't think, like if I said to you guys, all the changes, do you think the whole organization says, Elaine Nazardine, you come up with a lineup and we'll go whatever you think? Do you know what I mean? Like this person writing this, I'm thinking, you don't get the big picture here. It's not just Elaine. He's got to answer to people. So anyway, that's another aside. But we're going good here. Now, I got another guy. Before I'm obviously saving Jack to later, but what I give me your opinion now, you guys, on what you've seen recently, mostly on Miles Wood. Where is Miles Wood going to land as a player in this Devils organization?
I'll go. Miles Wood is actually my favorite player, so I kind of hope he gets a big role. But taking that aside, I think he's perfect for the fourth line role. I think he should have been that coming into the season. It looked like that's where he should have been slotted. And when it didn't, when you have to move him up, I think that's when it shows there's a problem with the team, because Miles Wood has all the skill in the world, but he hasn't been able to put it together except for that one season where he got the 19 goals. But he's shown time and time again that when he's given that bigger role, he it's not that I don't want to say he doesn't step up, but he doesn't score. He definitely doesn't score when he's given that bigger role, and he scores more often on, the lesser likely plays. He gets the breakaways, he gets away from defenders, he gets the dirty goals too. So I think he does better on a line where he's like, say with a Zajac, or say with a, if you want to put him with, say, Ruby and Quokkanen next year, or Anderson and McLeod, or something like that, where it's just kind of like he could get away from it. If you put him with, a couple defensive-minded people, and they could poke away, and kind of like Nico did the other night, where Nico just skied a puck and it landed right in front of Wood, and Wood got the breakaway goal there.
Yeah, well, he's got about 3 or 4 breakaways recently. I don't know if it was, I can't remember if Subban threw him one up there. But here's the only thing I'll say about Miles, and I agree with most of what you're saying. The only thing, and I've said this to Matty Locke, I said, I'm seeing just what I was talking about McLeod. Woody's got to understand, Woody, your speed is an asset if it's changes of speed. It can't be just all-out speed, because the defenders will see that speed and they'll adjust. And then I don't know if it was Detroit or where it was. I could still see, finally, I thought, Miles toe dragged it around the defender. Then he went in, and I think he scored a goal on his backhand. He went in with forehand, and just at the last minute, he put it on his backhand, just lifted it into the net. So I agree with you, and I, he's playing up with Hischier and Palmieri. He was obviously that's not his spot, but with the makeup of the team, that was his chance. But I think we agree that Miles Wood can have a impact, and he can be a front net presence. The power play, like nobody will, like he will battle at defenseman. Most defensemen now want a guy in front who will just be a screen. They said, okay, you can screen the goalie, and I'll stand in front of you and shot taken, and I can get it before you. They don't want to be pushing and shoving with that net front guy. So there's two kinds of guys you have to look at. But Miles Wood, whether he irritates them, he makes them engage him, which is really important for a net front, because then he can jostle, he can move where he can want, instead of one body screening the goalie, he can bring that defenseman with him, pushing him left, right, whatever, and then he can still be in a position to break loose if there's a rebound. And then, of course, the defenseman who doesn't want to engage him, he's engaged. Now he's not loose to get to the puck first either. You know what I mean? If Miles is in front, but that defenseman is loose, he's not tied up at all, that rebound comes, he'll get there before Miles. But now it's a spin-off. So anyway, I just see some hopeful signs in the last month for Miles Wood that I hadn't seen earlier. So, I'm just hoping that, because he's a terrific guy, and like you say, he's one of my favorite players too. How can you not like the entertainment value of Miles Wood? It's why they put boards up around the rink, because he's got to be, or he could be going like out into Mulberry Street or whatever. So then you guys, I don't want to take up too much time, but then the big question, I think we'd agree with Hischier and Palmieri and the kinds of years they had. But what about Jack Hughes? I'm just curious what you think, not just about how he's doing, but overall, when do we start evaluating him? Is evaluating him right now too early? Is it unfair, or those types of issues? You guys tell me what you think about what's going on with Jack.
So Chico, when it comes to Jack Hughes, I just think about what in my day job, how my life would change if the general manager of the company, my direct boss, both got fired. The most veteran player on the team and the person running things got fired or got moved or something, and then the star employee got moved, all in the same season or all in the same whatever, same year. How that would impact me and my work in general, and it would be chaos. Like, you think about just regular day jobs where bosses get fired and everybody's trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Now take that to a hockey team, and a hockey team that lost its general manager, its head coach, its star player, its captain, half of its defense, and then on top of it, they started off 0-7. John Hines seemed like he was kind of desperate from the beginning, just the way he was changing the lines on a daily basis. It seemed like something was just off with him from the get. I don't know what it was, but that the amount of times he changed the lines just seemed off.
But how about losing? Do you think that? I think you're accurately. I think he was under the gun early, because remember how we started. What were we, 0-6-1 or something? But anyway. So you're right. Then we
lost the first 7 in some kind. But I just think that hurt him so bad that I don't want to compare him to, people are comparing to Austin Matthews and then saying like he's not Austin Matthews, he's Niall Yakupov. It's like, calm down, people. Like, and then you look across the river and Capo Caco is not having a good year either. So it's not like we missed out. So it's like, just like, we need to calm down about Jack Hughes. That's all I'm going to say. Sam, what do you think?
I think Jack Hughes was thrown in the fire. There were a lot of changes last offseason. I think the expectations were high. He came, from the World Championships and juniors, and that was a lot for an 18-year-old kid to handle. I think he knows what he needs to do in the offseason, and maybe the offseason starting a little bit sooner, right now in this juncture. But he's got to, he needs to, take some time out, and he knows what he has to work on his game. I think the skill level is there, the talent is there. I just think that physically, this is the NHL. The guys that are 6'4", 230 pounds can actually skate and keep up with them.
Yeah.
So, and that's, but again, what you're seeing right now is he's outside of his comfort zone. Because he dominated, and which is why he's the first overall pick. It's how he handles this offseason and how much he improves and how much he listens to his coaches, his trainers, and what he's eating and all the details. I don't think he's going to have a sophomore slump. I think the kid's a winner. He's determined, and he's got, early on, he had that swagger when he was dominating and before the Devils drafted him. So I do expect to see that, but it's, again, I'm excited for next season to see how much he has improved. And in terms of Miles Wood, you guys talking before, he's one of my favorite players. I think it's one of those things like the same thing with PK Subban. Don't put too much on their plates. Miles Wood has a role on the team. He is a drummer. He is the pace setter. He is the one that responds back when the team needs a response back from that fourth line. You're only as good as your weakest link. So that fourth line has a role, and that energy role, he fills that like an all-star. Let him do that, and all the players surrounding him, like Jack Hughes and Paul Mary, they will get the job done. But you need to have a player like Miles Wood on the team, like back in the day when Randy McKay and Bobby Holik and Mike Peluso was anchoring that fourth line. They were they were the offense at times, and you wouldn't think so, but they were just manhandling the other team and just putting all the pressure. And if you remember down the middle with Holik and Jason Arnott, just down the middle, they would just pound to the other team was just worn out by the third period. And that's where the Devils, took advantage of those mistakes, if you remember those days. So there is a role for Miles Wood, but just don't. It's kind of like Ken Danik. He had a role. He wasn't the guy on the power play, but he was the drummer. He was the guy setting the tone, the leadership, and you need that on the team. You can't discount it, and that's where analytics does not show up on the spreadsheets. That's just my opinion, though.
No, that's all good stuff. I mean, you guys see it, and Miles Wood. I'm hoping I'd like to see him third line. I think now we might be wrong, and we will know next year. I'm saying like some of the steps that he made in terms of handling the puck and having a little better hockey sense in this last month. I would say, okay, Miles, next year you got to get 15 to 20 goals. There's no, I mean, you don't have to. When I say that, I mean you have to. If you're going to in your head think, listen, I'm a legitimate second or third line player. You have to score 15 to 20 if you're going to be that. Now, that's not all on him. So I think we agree on him. Now, here's the thing with Jack Hughes. With people, and I agree where you said just relax with Jack Hughes, because that's the thing. Here's the thing. I just let you know, Matthews is 6'3". Jack will never, you can't stretch Jack to 6 foot. He's the height he's going to probably be. He's going to put on a little more muscle, but he's not going to be like a Sidney Crosby who's 195 or 200. Their builds are not the same. Connor McDavid, the same thing. I think of Ovechkin. Here's where I think people have got to look at Jack Hughes. Do not look at Jack Hughes. And I didn't know. I saw what he was doing in the developmental league, but it wasn't the OHL, it wasn't major junior, and it wasn't major college. Do I think we should have taken Jack first? Absolutely. And I think he's going to be a terrific player. But we got to look at him like he's not going to be those players I mentioned, Ovechkin, Malkin, McDavid, Matthews. He is not going to be that kind of player because part of it is strength and size. But what he's going to be is he's going to be a really nifty playmaker, and his shot's going to get better. And he's not going to wow you. Like I was thinking, well, Jack's going to take the puck this year because I didn't know him. He's going to go end to end, and he's going to dangle people in then defensive zone, neutral zone, offensive zone. Well, it's the NHL, and like you guys said, these guys are big, and they can. One of you said they can skate. You know, that's a factor that most people don't realize. The big guys now with the long reach and strength, they also can skate. So I think with Jack Hughes, I finally even said to my wife, Dan, I'm doing it wrong by trying to evaluate anything on Jack Hughes this year. You talked about the changes, everything that's gone with Jack Hughes. You can't even begin to know what's going on in that guy's mind and what the struggles he's faced. Now remember, because he never played major junior, he never played Division I. Even his brother played 2 years of Division I hockey. This is like the year that should have been. I would have hoped that Jack would have played a year of OHL or really tough on the bus, 82 games, grind it out, or college hockey where it's such a big show every night. So I think this year is the year that don't evaluate him. Don't try to analyze what he's going to be because, first of all, I look at our centerman. One day, will he be better than Nico Hischier? Perhaps, but probably not next year. Pavel Zacha, I hope, is finding his way, which he seems to as a line. So he's not going to fit in there. Now we're going down to Travis Zajac, and you could play if you're saying Hughes has got to be center, then it's he or Travis Zajac third line, right? I mean, if you're going to put Jack in his natural spot where you hope he's going to flourish, it's got to be third or fourth line. And so when you say third line, well then he's got to have some skill. I mean, obviously for me, the one thing I talked to some of my nephews up in Kelowna, and I've got two scout friends, one for the Jets, and they watch the OHL, and unfortunately, Nolan Foote has been hurt, but two NHLers, ex-NHLers tell me, Chico, this guy has a big time shot. His skating, he's not like, he's not a fleet of foot like you think of. But with, say, Jack Hughes, I'm thinking, Jack can dangle, hang on to the puck. If Foote can rip it, what a combination those two guys would be. So, but next year, Ball, Kevin Ball, I don't know that we want to force him, but we're anxious, right? You guys are anxious, yeah, but we want to make the playoffs next year. So do we want to force Kevin Ball, 6'7"? He is what he is, but he's going to be a good defenseman of that reach, and Foote, you like to force him in there. And those are the really tough decisions. I think it was you, Sammy, talking earlier about this summer and the tough decisions the Devils have on how to just restructure, or not restructure, maybe structure the lineup that they foresee where each player is playing at the right position and getting a chance to be their best. To me, that's the challenge of even signing. We can go to signing some free agents. Remember this, boys. Last year, how has Trouba been with the Rangers this year? How would you say? Great, good, little above average, poor? What do you guys think? Jacob Trouba.
I mean, that whole Rangers defense is bad.
So there again, now remember, boys, that was the guy everybody wanted. If you get Trouba, you're going to change your lineup. Well, it didn't change the Rangers lineup. The problem is, I keep hearing about 7 teams trying to rebuild. I could give you 7 quick ones. There's not 7 good defensemen out there. If each defenseman went to each team, that wouldn't be enough for all 7 teams that are really in a rebuild. So my point is, as hopeful as I am, I'm not going into la-la land where I'm saying, well, the Devils got to sign this really impactful defense. Okay, Pietrangelo, is he coming to the Devils? Probably not, no. Guys. I hate to say it. but he's not. So again, I think, and then I'll quit. I'm rambling here, but I think last year, I, like all other Devils fans, we got so fired up to project how each one of these players, Subban, Hughes, and Gusev, and who has made a bit of an impact, but they were going to come in and they were going to be so good that we were going to dominate offensively. We were going to win games just by outscoring the other team. Whatever the expectations were, it was such a letdown. I don't want to do that again this offseason. I want to just say, okay, we've got some goal out. If they keep Schneider, we're in a good situation there. Defense, solidify, make us really protect and defend until we can inject, if it's a Ty Smith or if it's somebody else offensively. We don't know. Let's just be really solid defensively. If we can, plug in maybe a winger that could go with Jack or wherever that could bring some offense. And let's then leave it at that. And if we get good coaching and good goaltending, we're going to be in pretty good shape. But let's not go overboard and we got to stay in reality. And I think last year, that's why we were all so frustrated, because we got out of reality, and you know where that led. And so, I mean, those are my thoughts, guys. I mean, I know you guys have a few to finish up here, but I'm very encouraged. I really am. And I think, there's so many talented people in this organization, starting with Fitzy and all of his people, and Naz and the coaching staff. I think there'll be some changes. There probably should be, but a complete overhaul for me personally, I hope it doesn't happen, but we will adjust if it does. But I'm pumped. I'm disappointed that we didn't get to see these last 11 games, because it was setting up to be some real evaluation games where we could really find out who some of these players were.
Yeah, Chico, before we let you go, we were supposed to have you here at the Bahama Breeze, and but there's one question that the Devils put out a vote for the month of March about is it Taylor ham or pork roll, and we wanted to ask you, on air about that, because it was supposed to go to the end of March, but what happens to that vote? So I'm going to ask you the simple question that we actually asked Doc Emmerich last year. Is it Taylor ham or pork roll? Who would you vote for? Or which one would you vote for?
Oh. Well, I'm more familiar with pork roll,
Yes!
because that stretches. Yeah. where Taylor ham, I was going to say Taylor Hall, Taylor ham is pretty regional, and I like it, but I guess my mind goes to the pork roll. So I would
What up,
go
Pam?
for it. Yeah, you got that right.
Oh boy.
That was the question of the day, though. That would superseded everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens to that vote, right? As the season is suspended? Because I'm kind of want to know, but so we'll have to carry that tradition on. Actually, tomorrow, before we leave the Bahama Breeze, tomorrow we're going to be outside Amalie Arena, and tomorrow night we actually have your good friend Doc Emmerich on the 9 p.m. podcast tomorrow night. So yeah.
Give him my best.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, do you want to chime in? we can get you. We can get you on. Surprise him.
Well, let me think about that one. I mean, Doc is so good, and I'm so excited that he's going to be on. And he's left us, but I know where his heart is. He loves Devils hockey. I mean, he only left really. NBC put some pressure on him to cut down his schedule and give them more time, but he loved doing the Devils. Oh, we had fun. But anyway, I just regressed to the past there for a minute, but certainly say hi to him and yeah. So guys, I like your podcast, and you guys are on the right track.
Thank you.
And I think it makes the sport fun, even in the off season. So if you have something later after the draft or whatever, I'd love to come back and.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you,
We'd love to have
Chico,
you,
and
Chico.
we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you
you,
on
Nick.
site, the Bahama Breeze, next time.
Yeah. If you're doing something here in Jersey, we can do it here as well. So,
Okay,
all
great.
right, boys.
All right, stay safe, Chico. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure. Talk to you later, boys.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye,
bye-bye.
Chico.
Bye. That is Chico Resch of the Devils Hockey Network, color analyst, legend amongst the fans. He voted for pork roll. Can't believe it, Nick. Just cannot believe it.
You set
I
that
know you're
up to try to
Striker
make me
stuff.
look bad. You set that
Yeah,
up.
yeah, it kind of blew up in my face, but I can always edit it out afterwards.
Oh,
Anyway, just kidding.
live
Just kidding.
podcast
We
is
don't censor
live.
anything. Yeah. So, Nick, we're up against the clock. That was a great interview. Thank you, Chico, for coming on to the Nova Product Design Hotline. Batteries are running low right now here at Bahama Breeze. I'm waiting for the fish tacos to come out. I'm waiting for dessert. It's a great place. Too bad we don't. We've got something going on next year. We gotta go back to the BB&T Center when things die down, and we get the clearance because obviously we want to be. But yeah, so it's been great here at the Bahama Breeze, and hey, I like this angle shot. Is it? I mean, how great is this? I mean, the arena is right behind me.
You just like taking
I
me out of
encourage
the shot.
Devils to go. Yeah, I know. It's right there. Oops. Yep. So, all right, Nick. Well, it's time to go. So I'm going to cue up the music very soon. So tomorrow we'll be outside Amalie Arena. We don't know exactly what time. We're thinking like 2, could be a little bit earlier. And also, you want to stay tuned tomorrow night when the Let's Go Devils podcast, and it's just a coincidence, the timing, but this is the time we need Doc Emmerich. This is more of a national level of a podcast where we're probably going to have people tuning in from all over North America, listening to Doc and what has been going on. Of course, we're going to go to old stories, about Devils teams and in the past, work stoppages, lockouts and strikes and whatnot. I mean, this is different. Now, I'm not going to ask if it's Taylor Ham or Porco or Doc because that blew up in my face last time. So we're not going to do any of that. But Chico has spoken. He says it's pork roll. He's a pork roll guy. I disagree, but you can always agree to disagree. It's just kind of like politics. I still like it,
boy, no
even though I don't like.
politics.
Yeah, no politics. But for all the fans tuning in on Twitter, Periscope, YouTube Live, and simulcasting on the Primetime Radio Network, thank you for joining us. We're here at the Bahama Breeze. Also, we want to say a special thank you to Abby Reedley, the GM at Bahama Breeze. Even after the cancellation, she said, "Come on down," because she's been very hospitable to us. And we're obviously going to be coming down when things die down and play resumes. The games resume. Obviously, Nick, you're in Tampa. I'll see you tomorrow around 2 p.m. Eastern outside of Amalie Arena. And also, I'm going to cue up the music right now. Also, 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, Doc Emmerich is going to be on the Let's Go Devils podcast. It's going to be national. We have a lot of things to ask him. Well, enjoy the view, everybody. Enjoy your Saturday. We're all in it together. Let's contain this thing. Stay safe. Same to you, Nick. Everybody. Till next time. Let's go Devils.